My name's Jason Schuster. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and I'm the author of all the writings that these videos are based on. Each episode reimagines my work through the lens of artificial intelligence, blending human insight with digital interpretation.
Welcome to The Explainer. All right, let's get right into it. Have you ever been told one of your legs is longer than the other? If so, you're going to want to stick around. We're about to dig into a really common diagnosis that could be the secret behind your chronic pain, but probably not in the way you've been told.
So let's just start with a quick question for you. Have you ever been to a doctor, a physical therapist, maybe a chiropractor, and they have you lie down on the table, they do their thing, and then they drop the news, hey, one of your legs is longer than the other? I mean, it happens all the time, especially if you're dealing with some kind of stubborn chronic pain.
Okay, so the official name for this is leg length discrepancy, or LLD for short, and it gets blamed for, well, pretty much everything. You know, that nagging low back pain that just won't go away, or hip issues that keep flaring up? Yep, LLD is often the go-to culprit. But here's where it gets really interesting. The source material we're looking at today makes a pretty bold claim. It says that for the overwhelming majority of people who get this diagnosis, it's just plain wrong. Yeah. The bones in their legs aren't actually different lengths at all.
Okay, so a myth? How can such a common diagnosis be a myth? Well, let's dive in and really look at what the source says is actually happening inside your body. All right, so according to our source, having a true difference in the length of your bones, we're talking the femur and the tibia, is incredibly rare. It almost always stems from something pretty major. We're talking a bad break to a growth plate when you were a kid, or certain specific birth defects, or maybe a complicated surgery that didn't go perfectly.
And this is the key takeaway here. If you look back at your medical history and you don't have any of those big specific events, then the source is pretty darn certain that the difference you're seeing isn't in your bones. The problem? It's got to be somewhere else. Right? So that leads to the million-dollar question. If the bones are the same length, why on earth does one leg look and feel longer than the other? What's going on?
Well, the source points to one specific thing as the real culprit here, and it's not your bones, it's your pelvis.
The argument is that this whole illusion of a longer leg comes from a simple mechanical shift. You see, your pelvis has these two big kind of wing-shaped bones called the ilium, and what's happening is that one of them has rotated forward, kind of like a hinge, creating this imbalance right at the base of your spine.
So here's how that creates the illusion. Think about it. When that pelvic bone rotates forward, it actually pushes your hip socket down a little bit, just slightly lower. And since your leg bone plugs right into that socket, the entire leg gets shifted down with it. So boom, it appears longer. It's not a bone length problem at all. It's a positioning problem.
And this is where it gets wild. Because a little tilt in your pelvis doesn't just stay in your pelvis. Nope. It sets off a whole chain reaction, a ripple effect that can mess with your entire body.
The source literally calls it a compensation cascade. It starts with that pelvic tilt, right? That forces your lower back to twist, but your body is smart. It wants to keep your eyes level with the horizon, so to do that, it compensates all the way up the chain, often creating a counter twist way up in your neck, right at the top of your spine. And this isn't just about bones and muscles. This constant state of twisting and compensating can actually put stress on your nervous system, specifically the part that controls all the stuff you don't think about, like digestion and heart rate. So, according to the source, this could be why people experience issues that seem totally unrelated, like weird headaches, feeling dizzy, or even gut problems. Okay, so if the real issue is a tilted pelvis, what about the most common treatment for a short leg? You know, the heel lift? Well, let's just say the source has some strong feelings about that. And when I say strong feelings, I mean it. The source doesn't pull any punches. It basically says heel lifts are based on a totally wrong idea and can even make the whole situation worse. Think about it. The whole idea of a heel lift is to prop up the shorter leg to make things even, right? But if the leg isn't actually short, if it's just your pelvis that's tilted, then all you're doing is treating a symptom, not the cause. And here's the real kicker. By propping up one side, you're essentially cementing that pelvic misalignment in place. You're basically telling your body, hey, stay stuck like this, which makes it almost impossible for it to ever correct itself. So, if heel lifts are out, what's the alternative? Well, the source suggests a solution that's way more direct and, honestly, makes a lot more sense. The solution, according to the source, is to forget about the legs for a second and go right to the root of the problem, the pelvis. A skilled practitioner can use a specific manual adjustment to just rotate that tilted pelvic bone back where it belongs. And what happens then? Well, the hip socket pops back up into its proper position, and just like that, the long leg isn't long anymore. The length evens out instantly.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this huge shift in perspective. The idea that your chronic pain or that feeling of being off might not be because of some unchangeable structural flaw you've had your whole life. Instead, it could be something as simple and as fixable as the alignment of your joints.
And that really leaves us with a final, pretty powerful question to think about. Could the real key to getting out of chronic pain not be chasing the symptom, the spot that hurts, but instead understanding that whole complex chain reaction your body creates to compensate for a single, tiny misalignment? It's definitely something to think about.